I'm talking blood, Krellborn. Okay, Little Shop of Horrors right now. All right, this movie was a childhood staple of mine. This is something that I've never really talked about. This was one of those sacred ones. It's one of the ones that if I was hanging out with friends talking about movies and things, I'm very particular about certain movies I talk about with certain friends. If I don't feel like they can handle my tastes or things that I sort of grew up with, I won't share them. I feel like there sometimes certain things are so sacred that you want someone to be able to hold those movies not exactly in the same regard as you because they didn't grow up with them, but you want them to respect the movies on your lists of things. And this is one of the ones that I was reluctant to talk about here, and I have been reluctant to talk about in the past, unless I was around people who knew it and who understood, the gangsterness of this movie. So this is the 1986 film adaptation of the musical, and which is itself we probably grew out of was probably based on the 1960 film of the same name. And that's a different film. One day I'm going to talk about that one. That's an interesting film. I'd watched that several years ago, and after having never seen it in life. But the 1960 version is something to talk about. So we're going to get to that one. But this one is something. It remains. I hadn't seen this film in a lot of years. I don't remember the last time I watched it, but I watched it recently this past week, and I fell in love with it all over again. I was enraptured with the music and the characters and the story. And, I said, well done, Master Yoda. I don't know if you know this. So I discovered this sort of years later, probably like, I want to say back in maybe 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, something like that, that Frank Oz, who we all know played Yoda, the voice of Yoda in the Star Wars movies, had directed this film. And it's something. It's a tour de force, man. It's well directed, well acted, well sang. The people sang their behinds off, and it remains a classic sort of in my heart. And it's one of the films that's referenced in the family. Every now and again, it's one of the we reference movies in our family, and sometimes a lot of times, and this is one of those ones that every now and again comes up. So if you don't know the story of this movie, allow me to explain a little bit about it. You got this nerdy kid, Seymour Krellborn, played by Rick Moranis, who is this is like right on the cusp. This is prime Rick Moranis time. This is post SCTV. This is him this is the beginning of prime Rick Moranis. This is after Ghostbusters. And he's this movie, he's a solid, main character in this mess. Seymour Krellborn is a nerdy kid who has a hobby for taking care of plants and finding weird and unusual plants. He comes across this plant that is, not really well known at all, and starts taking care of it. And he discovers, as he's trying to water it and feed it and do different things, nothing is helping the plant respond. It's not growing. On the off chance, he stabs himself on a rose thorn. Also, I should mention he works in a florist shop. He lives and works in a florist shop. So that's what the plant situation is critical for your understanding. He pokes himself on a rose thorn, and he bleeds. And this he discovers by accident, really, this is what the plant requires: blood. And that's going to help it grow and do stuff, right? So that's our sort of premise. Has a crush, or he's pining for this beautiful woman, Audrey, played by the fantastic Ellen Greene, who also works in the florist shop with him. And, their sort of boss, Mr. Mushnick, played by Vincent Gardenia, who is also good. I remember him, just thought of him now from a film called The Super, starring Joe Pesci, who plays his son in that film. That's another one I got to talk about. If you haven't seen The Super, check that out. It's pretty funny. But Vincent Gardenia is the father in that. He's also the father figure to Seymour in this film here. And this is what we've got going on. So the film is really about Seymour and this new plant he comes into contact with, and how this plant changes the life of Seymour, and it changes the sort of the energy and it and the pace of the florist shop. You know, they're not making a lot of money at the start of the film, but this plant really picks things up for them, and that's what we've got to work on. It's an amazing musical, and I think all the music is great. You got Alan Menken, you know, one part of the duo that began the Disney Renaissance with Howard Ashman, who I discovered, I think, wrote the screenplay for this film. I didn't know that either. I never knew that until I just watched it this last week. I said, what the fruit? I didn't know dude was writing screenplays and stuff too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I saw that in the credits somewhere that Howard Ashman wrote the screenplay for this film. But those two guys, you know, if you know anything about musicals, you know Disney stuff, at least from the 90s through the early 2000s, if you know that the Renaissance period, Howard Ashman and Alan Menken are essentially the musical gods of certainly that early half of the Disney Renaissance period. And the music here, if the music here is any indication, that should tell you that the magic was there. I think they also did the musical, which makes sense. I mean, they're, the musical. But yeah, the music is great. My favorite, I have to spend a little bit of time talking about this because I like all the music. I love all the music. I've been listening to the music since I was a kid. I have the soundtrack, whatever. I'm a fan of this movie, needless to say. My favorite song of this film is probably Supper Time. And I'm going to take a little minute to talk about Supper Time for a second, because there's something that the sequence does where it's really, Audrey 2 has just, come alive, not long prior to Supper Time. Really, like Tui starts talking and everything else. So we already know the situation about the seriousness of Tui's sort of existence. Supper Time, the whole setup, the build up of the sequence. You got the women in the chorus in the back who are wearing these red dresses. That's like, it's almost like it's enticing. It's like, the red dresses, to me, I've always thought that, as I've gotten older, I've seen that, we know the plant needs blood to live. The red dresses are like blood, and they're sparkly, and the women are beautiful and sultry, and they're all, and it's almost like the women are beautiful and they're tantalizing to the eye. And it's just like, they're wearing blood red dresses. And the song has a sort of sultry, sort of sexiness to it as well. And the way Levi Stubbs performs it plays into that. The scene, the women in the chorus, the way Audrey 2 sings the song, everything sort of leads up. It builds up to this. It's like it simmers for a while. It's like simmer build up to this. It's priming you for like the kill, the kiss, the crescendo of the thing. The whole song does that, and it's actually beautiful. And I think there are differences between the film version and the album version, which I wish was longer. The album version is way too short. It's way too short. That bass line comes in. The bass line is probably like that bass line is man. I just a loop of that with the way it's killer. And what I am thankful for in the film version is how it is longer. It plays longer, and things are like, there's a lot of pause. There's pauses in it, and there's like, it's just it's like a meal. That song alone is probably for me the centerpiece of the film. It's probably not the actual centerpiece. I feel like the actual centerpiece is probably Oops. Dropping stuff. So I'm so excited. So the actual centerpiece is probably when Tui starts talking. I think right before supper time. I think that's probably where Seymour actually starts to begins to have a real relationship with Tui, because now there's real interaction. And while we're there, I have to talk about the puppetry. Like, there's something to be said, and I've said this before. I tell friends this when we talk about movies, and I'll say it again. I think there's something to be said for practical effects. We were talking about Yoda earlier at the start of this video, and how great that looks, how it still holds up, and feels sometimes in some ways better than CG Yoda from the Star Wars prequels. Yoda from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, that's a practical situation. That he's there. He's on set. You can touch him. He's there. And I think, that's what helps sell stuff, sells the dynamic with the character and whoever the puppet is. Same thing with the Mandalorian. Grogu is right there. Like, he's there in the mix. The Mandalorian's holding him. There's like stuff happening. There's like real stuff, tangible things you can get. And I think in the case of Little Shop of Horrors, you have a big plant, who always reminds me of the piranha plants from Super Mario Brothers, that can talk and stuff. So, like, you can see it's there, and Seymour's interacting with him. He's touching him. You can see it's tactile, and the way the tentacles and vines move. Like, it's actually they did a real good job bringing Audrey 2 to life at all stages, really, but especially when Tui starts talking and moving, and there's Tui becomes more expressive, and it's almost like, well, they could have done anything, which they could have, really. Like, Tui was doing all kinds of things, and it's a marvel, really, the mastery at work to bring that character to life is it's remarkable. You can't get over it. Like how well it looks. It looks how strong it looks. And it looks good. I just watched it last week now, so it holds up pretty well. One thing I want to do one day is watch the director's cut. I know that one's like a series, and in fact, I'd seen the ending. It had a different ending. That's probably the main difference, is my understanding of the two films. And one day I want to watch that. I'm nervous about it though, because I just I know how it ends. I know what time it is. And I think if you've watched the 1960 original black and white film, Little Shop of Horrors, that gives you an indication of how this one, the 1986 one, could end or should end, or how it should have ended, or whatever it is. And so I'm curious about watching it. As good as the theatrical one is, watching that from beginning to end, it's such a feel good. You just feel so good. I felt good. You really get caught up in the story and the romance of it, and it's actually quite beautiful. I mean, I was emotional, I was crying, and I was laughing. I was laughing like I laughed when I was a kid when I watched it. And I think that movies like that, again, I hadn't seen it in so long, so it was nice to go back there and watch it and remember the humor in it, and what was so funny about it, and what was so charming about it. Really, it's that's I don't know what I can't say. I can't say anymore how much I love this movie. I appreciate this movie, and it's always sort of with me. The music is, especially supper time. That's always sort of in the headspace in somewhere, some capacity. If you haven't seen Little Shop of Horrors, the 1986 version, you should watch that. Watch it. It's got, Steve Martin is in there hamming it up. Steve Martin is hilarious in this movie. Who else? Christopher Guest. He's a little bit part in there, but he's, if you've seen films like Best in Show or a couple other ones, Christopher Guest is in this film. Yeah, John Belushi, and Jim Belushi. Sorry, Jim Belushi. John Candy. You got some people in this movie that if you're fans of the Martin TV show, you got Sheena Arnold, Tisha Campbell, and Michelle Weeks. I don't know if you know Michelle Weeks. I don't know her from anything else outside of this movie, But the three of them make up sort of, I don't know if they're the chorus. I don't know if you would call them that. Maybe they are, because they're sort of always in the background and coming out and opening different songs and stuff. But you see them in there, like, again, you got great music. Like, it's and then also, look, the cinematography is cool too. There's good cinematography and good camera stuff going on. It's a real good, just the story is solid. It's sound. And I think if you're looking for a fun time and a good solid story with a little bit of romance, a little bit of thrills, some horror, a little bit, and you got some I think it's a good time. It's a good time to watch with the family or with people or not, or alone or whatever it is. It's a good film. So check out Little Shop because it's cool. All right. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you for taking the time to watch this rambly video. I will be back with another video. So until then, I'm out of here.